Very good. All right, excellent. Happy first day of spring. Doesn't it feel like it today? The grip of winter holding on to Maryland spring. It is a pleasure to be with everyone today on this end of crossover. We are now in that very final stage of the year that is the most intense and most important part of the 90 days. So the last 20 days are really where all the decisions come together and where we have to really prioritize what matters the most. And so in this year, uncertainty has been the name of the game, and trying to make the best decisions possible through uncertainty. These next 20 days will certainly model that standard. So I am really pleased with where we stand right now, given the challenges. I think we are set up to end session successfully. I'm also really proud of the Senate in this moment where things are really tense across the country and certainly in Washington, D.C. I think the Senate has proved itself to be a place where we can have fierce disagreements respectfully and thoughtfully and debate the merits of issues as opposed to the intentions behind where people are, why their opinions may or may not exist. And I think that really played out fully at the end of last week and through crossover. Just the tone and tenor of our debate, I think, was really a model of what Marylanders should expect from their legislative bodies. Also, yesterday we had the chance to do the First Citizen Award, which is also one of my favorite times of any legislative session because we get a chance to step back and really reflect on individuals who represent the best of us. And that was really the case yesterday in surprising Congressman Kweisi Mfume, and our lead staffer for the Minority Caucus, Teresa Hope Goddard, who both individually, two very different positions, but both represent everything that we want public service to be, dedicate their lives to helping others, come from two very different political backgrounds, but at the end of the day are fighting to make sure that Marylanders have the best opportunities. It was a fitting award ceremony for these two leaders that I'm very thankful to have had the opportunity to be a part of. So as we sort of chart this new path forward, of course, we had the budget agreement yesterday. I'm sure there are going to be a number of questions about that. I think we're in a solid standing. The House moved a number of the details forward, and the Senate will be taking it up next week after the House sends over their version. And so we're going to focus first and foremost on stabilizing the budget and making sure that we are as healthy as we can be financially in this uncertain moment, move the energy package, and then see what else we can get done. But those are going to be the two things that really continue to drive us throughout the rest of the session. So with that,
let's jump right into the budget. Despite the fact that there's a fairly broad framework between the agreement between the House and the Senate, one of the places that is an area of difference is transportation funding. I understand that both chambers have agreed on a number of roughly $400 million. But everything that's in the current House package is not where the Senate is. Can you elaborate a little bit on the Senate position and where you think the Senate will look to find the money to come up with the $400 million, roughly $424 million that it wants to put into transportation?
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think getting to the top line is the most important and the part that's going to be the most critical. We know that there are lots of different methods for funding infrastructure and transportation. I think the Senate's position is really how can we make sure that we are tying revenues that are most closely aligned to infrastructure investment. And so when you look at things like capital gains, something that is, somebody makes an investment, that investment pays off largely because of what's happening around that investment. That is the type of money that should go to improve our infrastructure system for our roads, our bridges, our transit systems, our ports. And so, the Senate's position is really taking some of these reliable revenue streams like capital gains and allocating it towards transportation. The House is looking, I think, more towards services or types of services that are transportation related. I'm very confident we'll meet somewhere in the middle and it'll work out. Getting to that top line of really what is the target, I think, was the most important, and then we can work through the details in the last few days.
Is the Senate looking at a proposal that eliminates the increase on the excise tax on car sales?
Certainly. I mean, we're excise tax and rental car fees that have an exemption are a place where we're probably going to land. Certainly, I think where the Senate feels comfortable saying that anything that is related to transportation and revenues from transportation, like the excise tax on car sales, is a natural revenue stream for our transportation system. And so that's likely one of the places of strong agreement.
Speaking of transportation, what is your reaction to the report that came out yesterday from the NTSB on the Key Bridge? And specifically, they put a lot of blame on the state for not doing the proper checks that they should be. It should be on these bridges. Is there, going forward, is there a change in how you see the state inspecting and maintaining these bridges?
Yeah, I was surprised by the report. It's certainly not at all what we had been hearing for the last year about the Herculean efforts by the state, local governments, and federal government to respond to what was very clearly a singularly caused incident, which was the dolly hitting the structure. For 50 years, we did not have anything remotely close to that. And so, this was a horrific accident that was caused entirely by a ship running into the pier. This is not the state's responsibility for a ship having a malfunction. The situation was functional for 50 years. And so, are there places where now we have learned what could happen, kind of the black swan event that we did experience? We should learn from that and improve our systems moving forward and make sure that if there are proactive measures that we can take for other bridges or in the reconstruction of the Key Bridge, we should absolutely take those up. But I think it's a distraction and pretty frustrating to try and rehash history about how this accident happened. It happened because a ship malfunctioned and ran into the bridge.
The NTSB pointed out state negligence in all this. The governor hasn't said anything yet. Have you talked to him about it moving forward? And since the governor has been silent, my words, will lawmakers light a fire under the agency and, to push to get, what needs to be done?
I felt very confident and comfortable in MDOT's response immediately following the bridge collapse and in the year since. I think it has been truly a Herculean effort to try to recover from this unbelievable tragedy. And so, I feel very confident in the leadership of MDOT. I believe that they will take any report seriously and ensure that safety is the number one thing driving any reconstruction and how we function as a state moving forward. I'd leave it to them to get into the details where their expertise is, but I feel very confident in the leadership of MDOT.
Mr. President, before we get back to the budget, just on this really quickly, so do you disagree with the report from the NTSB?
Look, I'm not an engineer, so I can't argue the facts of construction of the bridge and how the engineering was done. What I can say is a ship hit the bridge. Are there places where we could have made investments? I know there was a report by the port in 2002. My sense is it was impossible to prevent a ship malfunctioning in the way that it did, to hit at exactly the angle it did, to create this black swan event. And so I do not believe that this was negligence on the state's part.
Mr. President,
But if there were another ship that malfunctioned, would other bridges, are you concerned about the safety of the Bay Bridge? Are you concerned about the safety of other state bridges?
I feel confident about the safety of our infrastructure to the degree that it's feasible. What I do know is that we need enhanced investment because we know that we have old, I would say a repeat of an incident like the dolly hitting the Key Bridge is not my highest concern. My highest concern is that we have enough resources to be able to invest in our infrastructure in ways that make us a competitive state, and that's what we're trying to do this year. And I believe, I have confidence in MDOT that they will take the appropriate steps to do the level of inspections that are necessary to maximize the use of these resources.
were you troubled at all by the NTSB's finding that as of October, the state hadn't done any kind of risk assessment on bridges following the, use your words, the black swan event with the Key Bridge?
I don't know the details enough to comment on it.
Do you think a risk assessment should be performed?
My understanding is that there are regular inspections done on our systems through SHA and through MDTA, and so, but I don't have the details enough to know exactly.
That's different. A bridge review is different a little bit from what the NTSB is looking for with a risk assessment, isn't it? I think that's kind of the crux of what I'm getting at is can you fully understand the risks to the bridges without doing the risk assessment that NTSB seems to think is required?
I don't know that, I'm not equipped enough to know the difference between the types of inspections. I do feel confident that MDOT would take any report seriously.
Is this
So-
IT, actually, if you're gonna stick to the,
No, I was gonna go back to
Okay.
the,
if you're gonna stick, or if, does this IT tax at 3% run counter to the governor's plan to rely on some of these lighthouse industries to drive, the stagnant economy here?
No.
Why not?
Yeah. I think we are very mindful of this modernization of our tax system. I think when you look at where our taxation structure has existed, when we first put a sales tax in place in Maryland, it was about 50-50. 50% were goods, 50% were services. Now, when you look today, it's about 40% are goods and 60% are services. We have become a service-based economy. Now, you add on top of that the changes in technology with AI and machine learning and workflow algorithms. What we know is happening is that technology is displacing humans working, and there are big concerns about what that looks like moving forward. And technology is now infused in everything. It's not like you have a technology company and a transportation company. Every operation now is a technology company because it is embedded in everything that we do, and it has become, in and of itself, a good. And so this is really about modernizing our tax code to spread the burden of revenues across a broader scope of goods. And that, to me, is a fairer and more efficient system. Ultimately, companies are making decisions about tax rates on the margins. What's most important is that they have a great workforce, that they have an infrastructure where they can be successful, that they have access to a world-class airport where they can make international deals. That's the type of stuff that we have to invest in to help Maryland's companies grow and continue to benefit from the great assets that we have, be it from Fort Meade or NSA and Aberdeen and Hopkins and Maryland. These institutions are really why we in Maryland have a competitive advantage in things like quantum and cyber. And a marginal tax rate is something certainly that nobody wants an additional tax, but a fairer, more efficient tax system is better for everyone.
It's marginal to the point where other states that are gonna play up assets that they think would lure some of these companies would not be disincentivized by like a tech tax. You think it's that marginal?
I mean, look, if we go to Texas right now, right? Texas has one of the broadest service-based taxes, sales taxes in the country. And we go to Austin and you look at what's happening in Austin and technology growth in Austin, it's exploding. And so I think, we have to be mindful about taxes. We know that there is a tipping point. I don't believe we're anywhere close to it, but I think we are still going to find additional ways to invest in our business community and ensure that our competitive advantage industries are successful here in Maryland. What we are doing with the tax code is making it more efficient and fair. And so at the end of the day, we have to sustain government as appropriately as we can, and that's why these changes are being made.
What about like within the business community, we've heard some of this thought that they're seen as like a well that Democrats can come to increase fees and taxes when the fiscal situation isn't looking great, and we know that in the out years it's going to get much worse. From a messaging standpoint, I mean, how do you go against this concern that Business Eye in Maryland might talk to others who are already here and think that this 3% might just be the start of something to be able to lean on the business community to cut into this deficit?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think it's short-sighted to think that tax rates are the only things that are going into the decision about where to locate and grow. Do they matter? Of course, they matter on the margins. But creating a strong community that's safe, that has a great infrastructure, that has a great workforce, that's the most important. That's what every business leader says that they want, and we've seen over time be the case. And so that happens when the public sector is able to invest thoughtfully. We have to spend the money well. We have to make sure that we are maximizing every dollar. But I think that there is a very compelling argument to be made in Maryland, and we see it. We see companies thriving and growing here, that we are investing in our people and our infrastructure and in public safety, and we are in a place where businesses can thrive. And so I think that will be the most compelling argument at the end of the day.
so the Maryland Chamber of Commerce says that based on the NAICS codes that are in the tax bill as it stands now, or I guess in the BRFA, this tax would apply to 15,000 employers, almost 100,000 jobs do those numbers make you feel that maybe the NAICS codes need to be narrowed a little bit?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, we are broadening the tax code. That we are trying to make it less reliant on traditional goods. And we are doing it in a way where we know technology has exploded. It is a part of everything. And so we do realize that it is infused in lots of different parts of our economy. And that's why it is the fairest place to expand, so it is the least burdensome amongst all of the services that have grown. Particularly as we look at the growth of things like AI and what that will have, the impacts that AI will have on our workforce. We know that there is likely going to be displacement of workers. And so we will need resources in order to continue to invest in schools, in our community college system, in our higher education systems, so that people can get the skills they need to compete in an ever-changing globalized world in which AI is now doing the functions of a lot of previously white-collar jobs, be it accounting or legal services or consulting services to some degree, or branding and marketing and PR. We know that AI, as it moves forward, will displace jobs. And so now is the right moment to put in a revenue stream that we know is going to grow, and that we can use those resources to invest in the people that will eventually be displaced by this technology.
So you've talked a lot about the fact that the economy is shifting from goods to services. And in past years, there's been a proposal to reduce the sales tax, but apply it to more of the economy, to more services. If the goal is really reforming, making the sales tax catch up with the shape of the economy, why not reduce the overall sales tax and broaden what it applies to?
Yeah, I mean, look, there were conversations. We've explored every possible angle of approaches here. We landed on a place that was more narrowly tailored, that was an expansion towards what we know is a growing sector that will have a huge impact on the workforce moving forward, to be able to both fund the deficit, balance the budget with cuts first, and fill this gap. But this year was just not the year to totally disrupt the apple cart. And so we wanted to have a more narrowly tailored approach, and I think we landed in the right spot this year.
Mr. President, I have a two-part, sorry, Brenda, go ahead.
There.
Thank you. Mr. President, I have a question on your energy package. So, what are the fault lines right now between top lawmakers on the proposals, and how might that change as they come out of the oven?
Yeah, I think we are very, very close on the energy package. There's been a lot of great conversations between the chambers about where kind of differences of opinion are. They're not on the high-level issues. We all agree we need more Maryland-made energy. We all agree that we need it to be easier to develop projects that are generating energy here in Maryland. We know that people's utility bills are too high, and we have to find strategies to reduce those costs. And so the high level is full agreement. It's really in the details. It's in the particular proposals and how they would play out. Things about how do we reform zoning laws to make sure that it's both fair to local jurisdictions, but not overly burdensome for projects to move forward. When we look at how dispatchable energy would be captured and utilized, there is a process that will have to happen, and the details of that process, there are bits and pieces here and there of disagreement. I would say the other kind of major place where we are going to move something forward, but we have to work through the details, is how can we use existing funds through things like our SEIF, our Strategic Energy Infrastructure Fund, Strategic Energy Investment Fund, that has a fund balance to return dollars back to ratepayers for immediate relief. It's not massive relief, but it is more immediate relief. And so how that happens, the sheer logistics of what that looks like, are things that we are working urgently to try to figure out, and will be a part of this package. But it's the details. It's not the high-level, clear understanding that we need more Maryland-made energy that's cleaner than the energy we have today.
And second to that, what have your conversations been like with energy companies around this, and what is a projected timeline for procuring new energy sources?
Yeah, look, we are trying to do it as quickly as possible. The Public Service Commission has provided excellent guidance on what is likely. Obviously, I think all of us would like it to be faster than maybe available immediately. But we are hoping that in the next 18 months we can have clarity. If the bill moves forward and we use the PSC's timeline, we could have in the next 18 months the beginning of a project. That's all things going well, and so it's an aggressive timeline, but it's not impossible. And so we want to push as hard as we can, because we know that even though it may not be an immediate relief when it comes to greater generation in the state, it's necessary for our long-term stability, because we know in June prices are going up because of supply and demand issues. We have got to make the decisions today that allow us a year and 2 years from now to not face this level of crisis for Marylanders and their utility bills.
Mr. President, a multi-part question on the budget. So I watched the appropriations vote yesterday with the funding to some key programs restored, like the DDA, for example. It seems like the top line is that a lot of PINs, either vacant or new, have been eliminated, and funds have been restricted across agencies pending the completion of several different reports. Are those your top lines? And is there something that we're missing that is bigger? And additionally, you mentioned yesterday federal government triggers. Can you go into a little more detail about what that looks like?
Sure. So first on the first question for major cuts, I mean, vacancy reduction is going to be one of the biggest numbers that is above where the governor's budget was. If the governor's budget had $1.5 billion in straight cuts to government services, and we are about $500 million above that before you look at reductions in special funds. And so the governor really put forward some tough cuts that people are trying to navigate. Cutting the university system, it's about $111 million that's cut out of the university system. And so we are adopting all of those larger cuts that came in through the budget and doing things like vacancy reduction on the high level. But I think it's really important to note that while $1 million here and $2 million there doesn't necessarily sound like much in a $67 billion budget of $27 billion in general funds, it adds up. And so when there are hundreds of small cuts that are going to be made by the committees, those add up to hundreds of millions. And so that's what the committees have been doing, is what members have been doing, is looking to find anywhere where there are places to make adjustments in programming or in size of grants, in how a program operates. And so it will be all of these multitude of cuts across state government that will add up to get to the larger cut at the end of the day. The second question was about the yes, the triggers, right, yes. This is crucial, and I think is a core part of this framework, is that we know the uncertainty from the Trump administration will only grow as the months move forward. Now that the CR is passed, we did not have a government shutdown, but we know that there is an empowered executive administration that is ready to make billions of dollars of cuts that will have a disproportionate impact on Maryland. We don't know exactly what those cuts will be, despite us having an idea that it likely has to be something around Medicaid, Medicare, looking at core safety net programs, FEMA, Department of Education. And so when it comes to healthcare, we are looking towards models from the 14 other states that have these federal match triggers and federal grant program triggers that would give a bridge so that if these triggers are met, that it gives us time to use resources to bridge, to make decisions about what programs we can then restore because of those cuts. And so it is a critical component. It's something that we're also exploring with some of the blueprint education components too, is changes in the trigger based on how federal funds will be allocated to the state. Because we know that the state relies pretty heavily on federal funds in education when it comes to things like special education, to Title I for students who have higher needs. And so if we see dramatic impacts of those federal dollars to the state, it will have an impact on what we are able to provide. And so these triggers are really important financial balancing tools to be realistic about the dangers ahead, and put us in a place to be able to prioritize what we're able to restore in a cut environment.
Drilling down a
President,
little
on
bit
on the Medicaid triggers, can you explain a little bit more about what's being contemplated, particularly as discussed, it could potentially be a $1 billion hit to Maryland? What program areas or enrollment? Just explain a little more.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably there's two types of things that could happen. One is just a sheer cut in the federal match. So we're a program where we have the Medicaid expansion population that's a little bit higher income than your core Medicaid programming. It is a 90-10 split. And we've talked a lot about this one, where 90% is the federal government, 10% is the split. It was an incentive to expand healthcare access to people. If there is a change made where it becomes 50-50, that's a little bit over $1 billion that the state would have to make up. We don't have those resources right now, and so we would not be able to provide those services. We are trying, what the trigger would do is allow for 90 to 120 days to give us a chance to figure out what we can reallocate to try and protect that to the degree that we can. The other possibility is that the whole Medicaid program shifts from what is a fee-for-service based program. You get sick, you go to the doctor, we pay as part of the health insurance program to cover those costs, to a per capita block grant. And that would be a massive shift and would be hugely problematic. And to be perfectly candid, I am not sure what the state of Maryland would do if this were to play out this way. It would be a radical shift to the functioning of Maryland's healthcare system. It would affect not just Medicaid recipients, it would affect every Marylander's health insurance, because we rely on a system that is very different than any other state in the country because of our waiver, where commercial plans are inherently tied to our public plan. So if someone has Care First as their health insurer, and this happens to Medicaid, the radical impacts that will happen to people's cost of healthcare in Maryland will be dramatic. And so we have to put Maryland in a place that in this trigger, if that is the pursuit, if we move to a block grant instead of a fee-for-service program, we're going to have to make substantial changes to eligibility and what programs we can provide here in the state. And so we want to be in a place where we are realistic about that possibility and set us up and give us the time and bridge to be able to do it thoughtfully.
Mr. President, regarding these triggers, we've talked a little bit about the possibility of a special session perhaps in the fall. Do these triggers push off that possibility, or do you still think that there's a likelihood that because of federal actions or whatever goes on with the state budget, that lawmakers may still be looking at coming back at some point before January to deal with budgetary issues?
You know, I've stopped predicting because every given day there's a new piece of news from the federal government that changes my expectation about what is normal. And so I've sort of stopped predicting about what's likely. I think we're gonna have to play it by ear. This budget agreement, this framework, gives us the possibility to allow for our systems that already exist, BPW, to make the appropriate cuts. It gives a glide path through these triggers to give us time to analyze how best to restore programs should federal dollars dry up. And so it's unclear. I don't foresee us. I don't want to project that we absolutely would be coming back. We're going to have to see and assess at the time.
Mr. President, I wanted to go back to the cuts, thank you. I wanted to go back to the cuts. Yesterday, Chair Gazzoni said that there was a list of cuts that were on the table. A lot of it does come down to vacancy rates. You also said that this was at least $500 million. Can you provide a list of what else could be on the table as these negotiations continue and more cuts could be made?
Well, I mean, I would say as part of the agreement, we've asked the administration, and the administration has agreed to some across-the-board additional reductions. And that is something that they're going to be working through, the specifics that we want to give agencies heads the opportunity to present additional cuts that are beyond what DLS has provided, because agency heads know their departments the best. So it is a across-the-board approach to reduce the expenditures by significant dollars in the tune of $100 to $125 million of cuts above what has been identified. So we hope to have some of those available in the next, or give the administration the opportunity to do it through BPW after session. They bake in an amount that will be reduced through agency operations. We can provide a list that's all of the things that we are being contemplated through DLS analyses. Those are public currently, and it's a matter of which ones we are taking up or not.
So just to clarify, each agency head has been given a target in terms of what they're supposed to be going through and looking for additional cuts. A dollar amount?
We've given a structured goal that we are hoping that the administration the administration has agreed to meet by finding additional cuts inside of government operations.
Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good weekend, everyone.